Hello, everybody. This is Steve Herberger with Let's Talk Trash, the politically incorrect podcast. Today, we've got several topics we're going to go over. And to start off with, I just want to remind everybody that you can go to X and listen to the podcast or the preview, and you can also pull up, I post there about every day, and it's @Let's Talk Trash, or on Instagram and Truth Social, which is @Let's Talk Trash podcast. And any of those sites, we publish stuff on there daily. I have a guest today, which he was here a couple of weeks ago. And just before I get started with Mark, I wanted to go over a couple of things that have come up in the last day or two that I'm not sure whether or not Mark knows. But the first one was a bill that did not pass our state legislature, which was HB 4090. And what this was, it was legislation to criminalize unlawful presence in the United States. So anybody who's illegal who enters the state of Oklahoma would be charged up to or have a bond to be released up to $100,000 and would be deported to their country. That would be done by the state of Oklahoma. And any business who hires an illegal in the state of Oklahoma would also be criminally charged, and this would be a federal charge. If anybody is caught in the state of Oklahoma and has a criminal past that they can pull up from the country of origin or anywhere, even in the United States, they would immediately be jailed. And so it's pretty strict rules that they were going to have in the state of Oklahoma to make sure that illegals avoid this state, which it went to it did not get a chance to vote. It went to its third reading without having the ability to make it on the floor for a vote. So hopefully they'll get a chance to do it again. It was Representative David Hardin from Stillwell who put this bill before the state. And again, it goes through a process where they have readings, they make any changes, but it made it through the third reading without that happening. So unfortunately, it hasn't happened yet, but again, hopefully it'll get a second life. And then the other was the DOJ came out with I don't know what you want to call it, but they've come up with a rule that basically anybody, it's called the red law or something, that where if you are with a group of 3 or more people and you have anything to do with gun safety, guns in general as a group, you can become a target for the DOJ, where they can look to see if what you guys might be doing could be dangerous. They also said that they could be, let's say your favorite Democrat decided that he's your neighbor, that you have one too many guns and that you seem like a dangerous person, the DOJ can then come out and investigate you and make that determination. There's not a legal process for this, so you're not going to have a court hearing, which is un-American, unconstitutional. You can't just go through and go, you know what, I'm not sure, but I think this person might be a danger, and so then they can come out to your house and decide to take it. So with that being said, I want to introduce my guest, Mark Pregler, who was here as Mark the real estate guy last time.
Yep.
Anyway, we're going to have everybody seemed to enjoy that podcast, so Mark is back so we can talk about some issues. And to start off with is, well, first of all, do you have any comments about those things I just brought up?
Well, so, I mean, the red law, is that what the DOJ? So I did see some kind of a blip, I guess, a few months ago that I think basically what they were trying to get at is their concern, as I understood it was more of a kind of an anti-militia type ruling. And the way and as usual, that happens with any law that's written or proposed or anything else, it's too ambiguous. So there's a lot of concern from, say, hunting clubs. So 4 or 5 of your buddies decide to go down to Texas to go, hog hunting.
Right.
So you all load up in a truck, cross state lines. Guess what? There's 4 of you with, high-powered rifles because that's what you use to hunt hogs, and now you're in violation of that. So there's a lot of concern over that, and it's too broad, I believe.
Yeah, it's not even a law. It's not a bill.
Yeah,
just the DOJ came up with this.
It's just rulings and opinions. We'll get to that here in a minute. With in my world, but yeah, I mean, so that's kind of the other problem too. Is it's just an opinion. It's just a guidance, a suggestion. Right. Nothing's changed, and I think it could have some serious implications for the typical law-abiding citizen, which is kind of usually what happens with a lot of this stuff.
I'm definitely interested to see what this happens in one of the Democrat state or wherever where they do have gun rights. You're allowed to carry a gun, or what how this is going to be tested by the DOJ because again, there's no law in the book. Yep. I think it was violation of 4 amendments in the Constitution.
First one comes to mind is, the second first 2 sentences.
Right, that's right.
I mean, that was my take when it first popped up too. Was
right.
Well, it's not going to go far because that's might as well say we can't say anything.
Well, that they seem to keep pushing the limit on everything.
They do. And that's several podcasters I listen to, and again, Dan Bongino, love what he says is. Don't fall in love with a politician because they all hate you. So they're out for their own thing. So, yeah, and they keep pushing it to see what they can get away with. It's the beauty of our Constitution that was written by our founders almost 250 years ago is they had the foresight to see around a lot of the stuff and pretty much had a stopgap for all of it. And they were pretty clear in our basic fundamental God-given rights. This is what you're entitled to as being a person on this planet. So when government starts stepping in to take, chip away at little pieces of it, I get really concerned.
Right.
Even if it directly impacts me or not, if it's a constitutional right, it is what it is. Leave it alone.
Well, I don't know if you saw Ketanji Brown, the Supreme Court justice, who
I kind of dug into that a little bit.
Yeah, about her concern with free speech.
Yeah,
what government's role is in the free speech, where you're going. The government doesn't have a role. That's why it was guaranteed to us.
Sure.
It's not guaranteed to the government, and that's what the biggest issue was with social media.
Right.
Is when they went to every social platform and they regulated all conservatives, and they came up with this, where people could say, well, that's false information based on some idiot in a building somewhere in Nowheresville that nobody's ever heard of, and this guy or this girl gets to go, you know what, that's false information, clicks a button, and that's removed.
Yeah, so I read through what little I could find on it. I mean, there was and a lot of it was basically parroting the same thing from the last article. So when I say very little, there was not much deviation from, telling the story from one piece to the next. I kind of understand what she's saying. However, to your point, it's not your place to step in and say anything. So the way I interpreted the opinions that I read or the articles that I came across was that basically what she's saying is the government should be able to step in and correct things that could be harmful or dangerous. But again, as I just said, it gets painted too broadly. Who defines dangerous? Who defines what? There was a Fox News clip that was about the New York governor. And what they were trying to pass up there as far as handing out more gift cards to people coming into the country, illegals, all the whichever word we could say,
illegals.
But so I reposted that into a comment thread that somebody else had put on Facebook, and of course Facebook flagged it as false information. So me being me, I was like, okay, fine, we'll screenshot that, and I put it back out, and I said, okay, Facebook checkers. If it's wrong, then I guess you need to go to Fox and tell them to print a retraction of the story because this is a national news media. Whether you like them or not, this is who said it. I didn't come up with this. This is not, me and my tinfoil hat wearing buddies in the backyard came up with this. This was broadcast on national television through the channels. So if it's wrong, then they need to correct it. And that kind of goes for everybody. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's being, again, as we'll talk on some other topics here, what you're seeing in the news today is a bold-face lie, and it is spread off to another direction.
Right.
That's just not right.
So what's transpired is that the government has decided the only thing that is true is whatever they say.
Exactly.
Which is what you do in a communist country. That's what the Soviet Union, that's what China does.
Germany was the blueprint.
The only people that they're against are conservatives. And if you remember COVID, when that took place, they told everybody, ivermectin, you use it, it's horse medicine. And they made all this stuff, and they made everybody remove any information regarding this. They told doctors you can't sell it. Well, the FDA came out a couple days ago and said they're taking all that down because it wasn't true to begin with.
Exactly.
These are the people who are supposedly telling us what's true and what's not true. And as a country, the reason that it's in the First Amendment is because of our own protection. Because the government is not somebody that we're supposed to trust. The government is a body that's supposed to provide facilities for this country with our military, laws that are protect the people from a tyrannical government, right? Because they knew at some point, our founding fathers, that every government becomes tyrannical. And Thomas Jefferson even said that we would probably overthrow our government every 25 years because of the way the human beings are.
Sure.
Their desire for power.
Yeah.
None of that's happened. So basically, the Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown sitting here questioning, what right the federal government has. Well, the federal government doesn't have rights.
Sure.
The people have rights. And that's
exactly.
it.
Yeah.
The government we can't control the government.
Yeah.
We can only protect ourselves from the government and from each other.
Yep.
And the government is neglecting its duties. I mean, negligent. Because if you look at, the invasion in our country today, what's taking place is literally millions and millions of people are coming into this country, and who's supposed to protect us from that? The United States government. But they're not.
Right.
And we have the right to go down and protect ourselves.
Sure. That's exactly what Texas is demonstrating right now, is because the federal government has laid down on protecting the border. So Governor Abbott said, okay, fine, you're not going to do it. I am.
Right.
And he has the largest standing National Guard, I think, in the country. If not, he's dang near the largest. And something else, as you were speaking, made me think about, Dave Chappelle. He's like, okay, we have the First Amendment, but we have the Second just in case the first one doesn't work out.
Right.
And that was written for a reason by the founders, because they had seen what the English kings did to us as colonists over here in the United States.
Right.
We had no say, we had no nothing. So, the American Revolution was kicked off. You hear the Tea Party. Okay, that was part of it.
Sure.
The biggest part of it was that the king decided, quit sending them rifles because we need to get them in check. And that was pretty much the straw that broke the camel's back. That's why we've got the First Amendment, the right to petition the government and air our grievances and peacefully protest. You couldn't say anything against the kings in England, and that was a big problem. The second is because of those weapons being withheld from the colonists. That's why the Second Amendment's there. Because it's like, you have no right to take that away from us and anything else. So if you can't provide for my safety, then it falls on me.
Right. And
I'm not going to be sitting here with a grin trying to chase off some army. So yeah, I mean, and again, that's the brilliance of the American Constitution and the way it was pulled together and what our founding fathers were able to think of. And really, if you go back and look at these guys, they were literally 20-year-olds that were writing this Constitution. I mean, we had some that were older than that, but for the most part, they were kids. And for them to be able to have the foresight and the thought to think all this through is quite extraordinary if you really sit back and look at the architecture of the document itself, the intent, and what we're protected. So continuing to whittle away at it and to allow a Supreme Court justice, we can disagree with her, but at the bottom line is the Supreme Court is to uphold the laws and the Constitution of the United States. And if they deviate from that, then we got a problem with the court.
Well, we have a problem with every court right now.
Exactly.
Except for the Supreme Court, and the only reason is that it's conservatives hold it 6-3, and you take someone who is questioning what the ability of the federal government's right to free speech is absurd in and of itself, because social media was not anything that existed 30 years ago.
Oh, yeah,
right?
no, absolutely.
Or certainly not when the founders came along.
Yeah.
And for these people to get on social media, because now that is controlling speech. Mm-hmm. If you get on there and you see things been taken out, well, they don't take out things that Iranian leader says about killing all Americans, killing the country, destroying the country. You see these vile acts that take place all the time on these social media platforms. But yet a conservative stands up and says, you know what, the 2020 election was stolen. Well, then we need to shut that down. It's okay for Democrats to say it every year Republicans elected because that's free speech.
Sure. And so I guess we'll go back to what I was kind of saying, where I kind of understood or kind of I could see the point she was trying to make.
Did you listen to her?
I didn't listen to her. I only read. So
if you listen to it, you might get a different.
Well, probably
because know how someone talks, you can tell when they're what the meaning is.
There is a concern for public safety because of the social media threat. I mean, you've got stuff that will go viral. I mean, there are things that I see some of my people on Facebook reposting, and I'm like, bro, that's not. I can tell you right now that's not true.
Sure.
And then go out and look at it and like, just take that down. That's not true. So there is a concern about how you control the misinformation that is being put out there. Because there's a ton of it. I will be the first to admit.
Constantly.
All the time. But to be able to carte blanche say that the United States government should be able to control speech in any form, shape, or fashion is false. And
who gets to control that then?
Well, let's go back to the document. The people. We are in charge of this government in this country. Not the politicians, not the governors, not the president. We, the people, in order to form a more perfect union, I believe is the first sentence in it. So we're in charge. And that's the thing that everybody has forgotten over the last 30, 40, 50 years. Mm-hmm. And, I was even thinking this morning as I was kind of getting dressed, getting ready for the day, there's a huge problem in that, these – and we talked about last time, these huge omnibus bills and all this spending that's just out of control.
$1.2 trillion.
I need to tune back in. Been a little busy with real estate, but I need to tune back in and see what's going on. But, I mean, it's just absolutely absurd. So we've got to put the brakes on this government because it is our government, not theirs. And that's kind of the way they're running it is, well, I want to give X to whatever, and Billy Bob gets his thing and Susie Q gets her thing, and we get this bill passed. I'm kind of tired of that, and I've been tired of it for 20 years, and it's when do I get the say in how you spend my money because I'm being taxed, and this is my money, this is my country, this is my welfare. Where does it change? How does it change? Is it too far gone to change? I don't know. I mean, we've been having a lot of discussions over several years, not just here recently.
That's the point of a representative government.
It's supposed to be.
That they're supposed to represent us and not go in and pass these things, and they do it anyway.
Exactly.
And I mean, we can go on this for hours.
I know. But well, you're gonna have to go get beer then,
right? One of the main reasons, other than your knowledge on these other topics, was to talk about the real estate situation that's currently going on.
Yep.
I know the Fed did not pass the 0.25% reduction, but I know they're going to in the next quarter because they know that they have to get this housing market going. And they made the statement that it's not their concern. Chairman Powell made the comment that it's not their concern, which is, I mean, housing is the number one issue for every single person in this country. But to start off, I want to ask you, what is the current state of the market?
So right now, I mean, it's picking back up. So when we're in, obviously, the spring fling, spring market, I mean, that's usually where everybody says, hey, it's a great time to buy a house. I'm here to tell you, any time of the year is a great time to buy or sell a house. I've been absolutely slammed the last 4 days. I've got 3 deals going currently and got a couple more that are in the works, which is a stark contrast from last year. So 2023, we actually had the fewest number of houses sold since 1995. Mm-hmm. So kind of let that sink in for a second. Yeah. So when you talk about the population, the number of houses, even the number of real estate agents that are in this country, that is a abysmal number.
Right.
It is very small. So a lot of what was happening was the buyers got shocked, basically. So we've been cruising along 2.5%, 3% interest, and all of a sudden, bam, we're staring 8% in the face.
Right.
And everybody's like, nope, not doing that. So what we're kind of seeing now is with some of the national average, and I use an app that that tells you what the average is. So I'm not quoting rates because I'm not licensed to.
Sure.
6.9 ticked up just a little bit, which is down from where it was even 5 months ago.
Right.
The outlook both from Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, so the government lending institutions, they're expecting that we're going to see pretty comfortably 6.25 by the end of the year, if not as low as 5.5. So they are expecting rates to move. And I can't remember if we talked about this the last time or not, but a lot of the markets that I'm seeing, I've got a very extensive background in banking, so I can read this stuff. That's what I did for a long time, was manage all the investments for the bank that I was working for. There's usually a 1.5% spread between the 10-year Treasury yield and what you see mortgages going for. Right now, that number is closer to 3.
Okay.
So they're somewhat artificially inflated, and they have been for a while. So part of that is fiscal policy. Part of that is kind of some of these mortgage companies and these companies, both government-backed and non-government-backed, that are kind of looking at it going, okay, let's kind of hedge your bets for a little bit to kind of make sure that if something gets wonky, then we've got some time to react and some space to move. So I think in the greater outlook right now, we've got a ton of pent-up buyer frustration. And in fact, over the weekend, there was an article that came out from Realtor.com that there was a record number of houses listed last week than there has been in the last 3-year period. So we are seeing sellers who've now decided it's time to sell. So part of the concern in the market was, okay, we've got all these people that we sold houses to in 20, 21, 22 at 2. Like, in fact, I even came across a client 2 weeks ago that she has a 1.3% interest rate. And she said, it's going to take a lot for get me to sell my house.
No kidding.
So, of course, then it's like, well, tell me what you don't like about your house. Maybe I can help you. So we've got a whole bunch of people that are in that range. So they're really looking at, okay, it's literally going to double my house payment if I go and even buy something the same price.
Right.
And I totally get it. I mean, if it makes financial sense for you to be able to move, put your house up for sale, buy something, we're all here to help. If it doesn't, then you're in that category where you got to kind of ride this out for a little bit.
Yeah.
And there are several people in the 70s and 80s when it was double-digit interest, 16,
13,
17%.
14, 17,
So they had to ride out their mortgages for a long time before they could actually refinance it, and much less sell it and go into something else. So we do have some people that are trapped, and it's basically because of that interest rate. And a lot of it, unfortunately, it is what it is, and there's not a ton that can happen. But we, in Oklahoma, I didn't get around to pulling stats and doing my numbers, so I apologize. I was hoping to have all these fancy numbers to tell you and make me look smarter than I am. So, I mean, in Oklahoma, we are still in a lower housing supply. It's a lot better than what it was at one point. I remember at one point I looked down and we literally had 2.5 weeks of houses to sell.
Right.
And, I'm sitting in an office of 100 people going, okay, so who's working at Walmart next week? Because I don't know what we're going to do. We only got 2 weeks of houses to sell.
Right.
Last time I looked, we were pushing about 2 3/4, almost 3 months worth of housing inventory. That's still a seller's market. There's not a ton of stuff out there with regards to choice.
Yeah.
A healthy market, typically it's kind of understood that if you've got a 6-month supply, that's where it's kind of balanced and equal, where buyers and sellers are not having to beat each other up to get something sold. So while it might not feel like it, because I know that all of a sudden we went from houses selling in 24 hours to now, oh gosh, this has been 3 weeks, 6 weeks.
Right.
Hey, it's been 4 months. I can't sell my house. That's where we start seeing those longer timelines, and that's kind of a healthy timeline. Is literally, I listed a house. I knew it would probably go pretty quick because it was lower end, entry level, $190,000 house south side.
Right.
Had it on the market 3 days and had it under contract. Knew that one would probably go pretty quick. We're still seeing that really kind of translate up through to 50, up to 300 is kind of where that really starts to taper off. But yeah, you get into the $500,000, $600,000, $1 million houses, which Oklahoma's been adding a whole bunch of $1 million houses to the roster, which is nice. But those do start to take longer because that is a whole different clientele than a lot of people who are first-time home buyers or they're trade-ups. So
for many years, I've looked at this for a reason, how long homes are on the market. and they've usually been between 80 to 100 days.
Yep.
Was the average for many years.
Yep.
That's what our expectation was.
Mm-hmm.
But I have noticed that the increase in contracts over the last month seems to be ticking up quite a bit.
It has.
And which is a great sign, because I think if it would be greater had they dropped a quarter of a point, because people would think, okay, we're going in the right direction. That's enough, because I can refinance a house, probably in 2 years, and it's not going to cost me much at that point if I make that change. So that's, I think, the mindset. Still, people are realizing, you know what, that's not too expensive, for me to go ahead and buy a house for the house that I want, because a lot of things that dictate people's changes, not a lot of them, I don't know what the percentage is, you might know, where people just go, you know what, I think I'm ready to get another house, or I'm ready to change houses. A lot of time it has to do with schooling or work or different things that people want to make those changes or need to make those changes, or they've now added another child and they're in a 2-bedroom house and this is number 3 or 4.
Right.
They're like, we got to do something.
It's like, come on.
I mean,
typically the American homeowner is changing houses every 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
So I kind of laugh with some of my clients as I'm working with them, like, oh, this is my forever home. Dude, I've had 3 of those.
Right.
So don't get too attached.
Right.
And there are some people that will buy a house, they live in it 20, 25 years or longer.
Yeah.
And some of those, I mean, those are harder to find than what we typically deal with today. It's and there's probably a psychological aspect of that. It's the instant gratification. It's like, I'm tired of this. Let's move on to something else.
Yeah.
So I think right now people are going to be a little more deliberate in when they make those moves, simply because of the cost of money.
Right.
And there's some other things that kind of factor into that. Which are ready to jump into that part?
Yeah. Well, and you look at I mean, when's the next quarter? Is that June?
So they're gonna. It sounded like, because I listening to Powell is like listening to a college professor.
Right. Well, I mean, not only that, but when he said it's not our issue, I'm going.
Well, it kind of is.
I mean, how can it not be?
Houses, cars, and food are one of the metrics they look at when they determine do we need to raise or lower. So, I didn't expect a change this time. Probably next meeting you're going to see a little bit of a back off.
Right.
In the fall, I expect them to kind of speed it up. But again, inflation was kind of ticking back up. So that's the thing that they're fighting, unfortunately. Yeah. And when we get into houses and the cost of stuff, it is a supply and demand market. So,
well, and inflation is the issue.
Yes.
But we just passed another omnibus for $1.2 trillion, which is
here we go.
the only cause for inflation, period, is government spending.
Yep.
There's nothing else causes this. There's nothing that American people can do to change inflation or have anything to do with it. It's the government spending.
Yep.
So it's like dumber is trying to control dumb, or dumb is trying to control dumber. You know what I mean?
Well, one of the two.
And we're all sitting here on the sidelines going, listen, the two of you are idiots. Can you just stop?
Stop. Exactly. And that's the bottom line. And I think the last time when you asked me what made me mad, it was government spending. I mean, stop this stimulus stuff. Because every single time the government spends $1, I don't care if it's $1, I don't care if it's $1 trillion, they create inflation because they are inflating the economy.
Right.
Because they have no contribution to the economy whatsoever. None.
Right.
They don't produce a product. They don't provide a product. There's no need for it.
And they spend money as though there's no cause, or there's no effect from what they're doing.
Yeah. So my wife's uncle always used to say something when he was talking about the trucking company he worked for, and I kind of like the saying. It's like they're spending money like a drunken sailor on shore leave. Yeah. With a credit card.
Right.
That's pretty much it.
And they're not held accountable for it.
Exactly.
Now,
exactly.
One of the changes that came up, I think it was a court case that you'll have a better idea, but the commission. Tell me what you know about that and what took place.
Well, the short answer is nothing's changed. And nothing will change until at least July. And even then, nothing's really going to change.
So what was it? What took place then?
So what happened was about a year and a half ago, I'd heard. So somewhat of a new agent started to get out into some of the conferences and really kind of listening to what the leadership was saying. And leadership, I'm talking national leadership. So off comments were kind of being made here and there about, well, buyer's agents are going to find another way to get paid. And I'm kind of going, what are you talking about? Mm-hmm. So it was almost like a big secret, if you will. So I really did a massive deep dive into what was going on. Well, it was this Stitzer Burnett. Yeah, I think Burnett's the name. Stitzer. Well, just called the Stitzer case. It was a class action lawsuit that some home sellers in the state of Missouri filed against National Association of Realtors, Keller Williams, Anywhere, Home Services of America, and then there was an MLS. I think it was the Penn. Well, no, Penn wasn't involved in that one. There was another MLS that was involved in it. So, and I'm probably skipping over one defendant in the thing. Basically, the crux of the argument is sellers did not have the ability to negotiate what they were going to pay to a buyer's agent. Mm-hmm. And that was basically the crux of the lawsuit. With the NAR-sponsored MLSs, so the multi-listing services. So we have 11 MLSs here in the state of Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. That's a topic for another day. But basically all these are NAR-sponsored and National Association of Realtors-sponsored MLSs. Mm-hmm. And so they abided by some of the guidelines. And part of the guidelines with the National Association, which ironically was a lawsuit that was filed in the early 90s, mm-hmm. that got rid of sub-agents. So if you went and bought a house with an agent, they had the listing, you didn't have an agent, they had to farm it out to another agent within the agency. Don't quote me on that 100% because it's something I don't really need to know. So mm-hmm. I kind of know enough to be dangerous on that part. But basically there was a suit that said, okay, you need to be able to share or have commission that we can split between the listing agent and the selling agent. Mm-hmm. Okay, fine. So they did that. So in the MLS today, as an agent, I could go through and see what a house was being offered, my side for me to get paid to represent a buyer to sell that house. Mm-hmm. Well, what was accused of in this suit was that agents were actually going through and were sorting houses that a client wanted to see based on how much they were going to get paid from that, that seller. So they'd only show the ones that were paying the most, and they wouldn't show the ones that paid the least. Mm-hmm. I can tell you as an agent, I don't care what I'm getting paid. I mean, I do and I don't. So for me to show you House A versus House B, if House A is paying 3% and House B is paying 1%, if you want to see B, I'll go show you B. And that's what that's what I got paid.
If it fits the narrative. So
sure.
if when it came across, it basically said consumers now can negotiate their percentage.
So negotiating has always been something that people can do, period.
Okay.
Now, I will say it was muddy as far as what could you negotiate, but the bottom line is the National Association of Realtors never set a rate. Mm-hmm. So where you see on the news, which I will say is a bold-faced lie at this point, that 6% is gone, 6% was never a thing. It was never stated anywhere. The National Association never stated a rate. The local MLSs have never stated a rate.
But that's the average people use.
Well, so let's argue with yes. And so it's just like, why do attorneys charge you 40% on the settlement that they get you? That's just what they charge.
That is what they charge, and sometimes it's more than that.
Yeah,
exactly. And why do they charge $390 an hour? There
was an economist that testified in that trial.
Yeah.
He was from, I want to say, either Texas Tech or Texas A&M. I forget which one he was at. But basically, he said, look, I went through and looked at this, and we pocketed everything into categories and groups, and we looked at where were the 3% is being charged, where were the 2.5s, did we see an anomaly? And he said, yeah, we saw an anomaly. So like in one community, we would see that 3% was always being paid. In another community, 2.5% was always being paid. So basically what that boiled down to was this was market pricing. Mm-hmm. So this is what the market could bear. So it's just like you can sell a pickup truck for one price here in Oklahoma and sell the exact same pickup truck for another price in Texas.
Sure.
It's the same truck. Mm-hmm. So his argument really kind of fell on deaf ears with the jury. And here's the biggest problem with the jury. 8 persons, 6 of which had never, ever been through a real estate transaction. They had no idea what they were deciding on.
Yeah.
And that's a huge problem because you really want people to understand who've been through the process and understand. These people have no idea.
Yeah.
So I blame NAR's attorney really for selecting that jury because they didn't kick him out.
Right.
So that
probably the same ones they use for Trump. So.
Well, who knows? But yeah, I mean that's kind of the problem. But the biggest thing and the biggest frustration that we have as agents right now is just the bold-faced lie that's being told in the press, which is 6% was never a thing.
Right.
You've always been able to negotiate your rate.
Right.
And nothing's changed until July, because right now everything that's been publicized is a proposed settlement from the National Association. It has to go through court approval.
Okay.
Now the DOJ has chimed in and said what they wanted to see, but until the court approves it, nothing's going to change. And who knows? The court may come back and pile 10 things on top of it that they're going to do. We don't know.
Okay. Well, let's go to another topic, which is you and I have had some brief little conversations about Robert Kennedy, who's now an independent, who's a Democrat. I mean, he's still on the climate change. And there are several of these issues that, because Democrat is what a Democrat is in my book. But, some of these things like the climate change, it's a hoax. And I don't, if somebody's going to say that it's true, I have a huge issue because I know it's BS.
Sure.
And here's the issue with that one topic is, everybody wants clean air and clean water for their families. Nobody's an idiot. Nobody wants dirty water. Nobody wants our environment not taken care of. That's never been the issue. But this made up issue with the climate change. I mean, I'm an old enough guy that I've gone through the ice age that we're supposed to have, about
70s.
the ozone layer that was supposedly gone. It's constantly. It's all about control.
Yep.
That's one issue that is a big problem for me. But I wanted to get your thoughts on what you thought about Robert Kennedy, because there are a lot of positives too.
Sure.
That come with him because of the things that he's taken on. He's very smart.
Yeah.
And he seems to be his own man, clearly because his party kicked him out.
Right.
And they don't want him running underneath that because they know that he would destroy Biden. And they have Biden in office for the purpose of what they're doing now, which is basically try to do away with our constitutional rights.
Yep.
And because he's just an idiot who signs his name to any and every order, whatever his little neo-Nazi flunky in there in the White House goes, here, we need you to sign this form because we're taking away some more rights, or we're going to pay off these student loans for this group of people so we can try to get them to vote for you.
Yeah.
This, that, something else that nobody in their right mind would do if they cared about the country. And so they had to get rid of him. And that's what they decided to do. So what are your thoughts on Robert Kennedy?
Well, so I'm intrigued. Now, if today, if you put a ballot in front of me that says you're going to vote for Kennedy, you're going to vote for Trump, I don't know. I got to sit here and think about it. There is some inherent baggage with Trump, but I think, and when I kind of suggested this topic, I had some conversation, was kind of listening to other, conservatives and libertarians that said, I can't vote for Biden, but I don't want to vote for Trump. And then you've got Kennedy. So my concern is this. We got a Ross Perot in the making. Are we going to lose one side or the other because this guy came in to, steal some of the votes? So, I mean, to your point, he does say some things that I like. There's some things I don't agree with. Trump, I think, and here's kind of, my 20-year-old son and I have had this conversation a lot because he's like, okay, well, which one do we do? Who do we do? Who do we go after? I'm like, well, here's the problem with Trump. I mean, we saw what happened the first 4 years that he was in. He was just inundated with lawsuits. He's not even in office now, trying to get back in, just hammered with lawsuits and ridiculous charges.
But isn't it amazing what happened in those 4 years with him being hamstrung the way he was?
Yeah, and so my concern is, are we going to have to deal with that again? And I think we got a lot of conservatives that are saying the same thing. Like, I would love to give him the revenge tour, but I don't know that I can put up with another 4 years.
Don't you think, though, that unless it's a moderate, like a Mitt Romney person who's really a Democrat, that's the way it's going to be anyway with any conservative? I mean, if you had DeSantis and he came out and he was conservative, they're going to try to annihilate him too.
Well, and
they want the control.
No, exactly.
And they can't handle a guy who doesn't need them.
Yep.
He doesn't need their money. He doesn't need them to for any reason whatsoever.
Yeah.
So their thought is, well, we got to destroy the guy before he destroys us.
Yeah.
Right.
Which then gets us back to their politicians. They all hate you, so it doesn't matter. So,
right.
But when you get to these two independent guys, independent being they're not paid for by anybody. So Kennedy and Trump. Mm-hmm. Again, there are some things that Kennedy says that I'm intrigued by.
Anything in particular?
Well, I had a whole thing pulled up here.
Well, it's okay.
I was trying to prepare. So some of the things that
I can tell you what I think is that his stance on COVID, I'm 100% behind him. He has said that he thinks that there needs to be like a Nuremberg style trial because what these people have done. That Fauci needs to be held accountable and should be in prison. I'm with him on that.
No, absolutely. And so same thing with that. And even further where he says, okay, we need to go into the FDA. We need to really examine these drugs, these medications, all the stuff that's coming in.
Food?
Every day. Well, yeah, the food. Our food is horrid. Why do you think our obese rates are through the roof? I mean, we're eating garbage.
And the disease. Why do we have so much cancer? It's because of food we're eating.
Yeah, exactly. So for that, I mean, yeah, absolutely. There were a couple things, and like I said, I was looking at it late last night. I can't remember which one. One of them was, and it had, basically I need more information. There's something about housing. He wanted to guarantee a 3% rate with some government bonds. I'm like, okay, now I don't know, but I need more info. But there were a couple other things. I mean, I'm with you on climate change. Climate change is a political buzzword. If you go back and look at the history of the planet that we can prove in geological records, it is much cooler now than what it was then. And at one point, it was much hotter.
In the medieval times.
Exactly.
They didn't have cars.
No. So where's this massive pollution from this Suburban that we got a ban now and everybody driving around electric cars? Where was that in the Paleozoic era? I probably said that completely wrong. But anyway, I mean, it doesn't make any sense. The planet is a living thing. It heals itself when it needs to heal itself.
Right.
And I absolutely refute that the human population in the last 150 years has put so much pollution onto the planet that we've absolutely destroyed it and killed it. Mm-hmm. Sorry, the planet's billions of years old. It's going to outlive all of us, and we'll get along just fine without us.
Especially if you think of what gets blown in the air from one volcano compared to what humans actually do. And the other silly thing is about growing crops or having cattle. Mm-hmm. It's all about control. And here's the thing that and I've thought about this with the Trump president and a Kennedy vice president.
Yeah.
The reason it would intrigue me is two things. Is one, I think that Kennedy would go after these people if Trump said, listen, you take COVID, you take climate change in the right direction, and you do these things about cattle and all this other nonsense, and you attack it. You destroy these people who did this to our economy with COVID. You go after them any which way possible. I give you full authority to go after them.
Yeah.
And the second would be probably the healing, I think, that would take place with the country, because right now I can't stand Democrats and Democrats can't stand conservatives.
Sure.
I have friends that are Democrats and I still do. Mm-hmm. And but the fact is that the lunatic road they're going down, where anything's go that is wrong, demonic. I mean, the things that they are for, and that they think that men should play in women's sports. I mean, this is just as absurd. Women have fought for hundreds of years just to get the right to be in a sport. It was 1970, 71-ish, somewhere around there, when the first woman was able to run in a marathon, believe it or not.
Oh, yeah.
It's not that far removed.
Oh, I know.
And now we've decided that we're going to take that completely away and let any guy who tries to dress up as a damn wig or call himself by some female name to run in the sport. And it's absurd. And I think that right now we're on so completely different sides that if you had a party that was made up of a Republican and a Democrat, perhaps that would heal and maybe tone down, going after Trump and just say, you know what, he's here for 4 years. Let's not sue him and go crazy. And Democrats, I mean, the last poll that came out, that 70% of the population now believes that the 2020 election was stolen.
Yeah,
that's a huge number.
Yeah, the number's growing. So for us tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorists that said, "Hey, we might want to look at this. There might be a problem," and then it was met with all the pushback. It's like, we're just saying look at it. We're not saying overturn it. We're saying just would you look at it?
Yeah, but now that I post this on X every day almost, the election, the fraud that was found, now it's I want somebody in prison. I want a lot of people in prison.
Yeah, if you could get Trump and Kennedy both to check their egos. Now, again, you're talking about politicians. They are. I mean,
Trump's not a politician, but he's a businessman. He's an egotistical.
There you go. You got to have the ego to do any of that stuff.
I can tell you what. Could you handle this nonsense?
No.
Without that kind of ego?
No.
I would be
Negative.
crippled if I had to sit there and take this abuse on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I mean, a judge wanted to fine him $450 million. A judge who has no idea the cost of real estate, knows nothing about it, said Mar-a-Lago was worth $18 million because it's purely political.
Yep.
And then, fortunately, an appellate judge came out today and said $175 million, and Trump says, "I'll pay that in cash or a bond."
Yeah,
because I can deal with that.
Yeah, exactly.
But I can't deal with $450 million because nobody will write it.
Yeah.
There wasn't a single insurance company that go, "We can't write this. We can't write a $450 million bond."
Yeah.
And not only that, a lot of them were getting crap for writing his $80 million bond to that lunatic lady who claims that she was sexually abused, but she wasn't raped, and then she doesn't remember when it was. She doesn't remember where exactly she was or what she was wearing, but somehow this is a true story.
Yeah, stories of convenience. But if you could get both of them to agree, I think that would solve a lot of problems for these conservatives. And there's a lot of Democrats that have said, there's no way I'm voting for Joe again. So if you were able to combine that ticket, I think it would solve a huge problem. Yeah. And then, we're going to talk seriously about Joe winning the second go around. If he did, they'd be like, there's no way. There's absolutely no way. So, I mean,
I find it intriguing.
Yeah,
anyway.
Between the two of them, if you mix them together, I think they would balance out some of the crazy on both pieces. And to your point, he could wind Kennedy up and go send him off in the direction to go take care of this FDA stuff and all these problems and really get to the root of some of the health issues we have in this. Yeah, because even to his point, his uncle, John, we were the healthiest we'd ever been in this country when JFK was president. I mean, there was videos of PE where you see these boys in PE class, 15, 16 years old, with almost 0% body fat, just muscular and athletic.
But the food we ate was also just regular food that was grown in crops that they put together and put in a grocery store or general store for people to get the food. Yeah. Now it's processed to such an extent. Yep. You have to correlate that with the huge increase in cancer that comes along here. If you go to Europe, where we spent in Eastern Europe, we spent the month of October. You went in stores and you didn't see the same kind of food. It wasn't like that. Like they had a huge container full of oranges, right? Yeah. And these glass bottles beside it. You put the glass bottle in, and then it took the oranges, and it would start squeezing and crushing them
in front of you.
And so you had orange juice, right? It's literally, there's nothing else added to it because you watch the oranges fall down into the deal, and they don't use the same chemicals for their crops either.
Exactly.
So you're not getting the chemicals that they spray here in Europe because they outlaw all that stuff because their goal, I mean, even in Russia, their goal is to have healthy food for people. Yeah. And in the United States, we can't even do that.
Exactly.
Because we're committed to too many of these companies that will give our politicians tens of millions of dollars to do what they want. And so they'll say, we need to add these pesticides. We need you guys to okay all this. And they're like, yeah, okay. Well, that's fine. You put $5 million in my coffer for me to run for office, you bet.
Yeah, let's get it done.
Let's get it done.
Well, it's Putin has a law on the books that basically if whoever you are, if you raise GMO products, I mean, it's prison, right? And so there's a guy I follow on TikTok, Conservative Ant. He and his husband went over to Paris, and he's a Diet Coke freak, loves Diet Coke. Went over there, couldn't find it. And he started asking around. They're like, saccharin is outlawed here. You cannot have
Diet Pepsi
it.
was there either.
No diet, nothing.
And of course, there was no Diet Pepsi.
Yeah, exactly. So to your point, most everything that's in our food products in the United States, most of the countries have banned almost all of it. And you can't find it outside the U.S.
Yeah.
But hey, you can't have Vegemite in the U.S. Don't bring that stuff from Australia.
Right. Well, we're running long on time, so I want to go through at least one other topic, which is the squatters' rights.
Yeah.
What in the world is this? I mean, you've been in the real estate business. I mean, this is why would a squatter have rights?
So, if you have to go back to medieval England, so to understand where the squatters' rights came from, you have to go back that far. What happened was you had people that were trying to escape the king's taxes, and they literally went out and claimed a piece of property so they could avoid taxes in a kingdom. There were some rules, I think like Denmark had one that you literally, if you could light a fire in your hearth by the next morning, then you could claim that as your house. There was another country that you literally had to build a house in a day. So a lot of that was, usual tax evasion, trying to get around the king's taxes. So a lot of the states in the U.S. has adopted much of the way that those were written for squatters' rights. It's been modified to some extent where it protects people who, say you have somebody who has they're renting a house and their lease is expired, so they might have a legal right to occupy that spot, but straight up squatter. It gets really, really muddy when you start looking at, okay, what's a squatter versus a trespasser?
Like the lady
versus,
who changed the locks on her property because they broke into it.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, that's a trespasser, and I got two solutions for a trespasser that I won't say on this podcast.
Yeah, but that's the point.
I mean, so exactly. So
she got arrested for her own house for these people these illegals breaking into it.
Get into it, yeah. And I've seen a clip of the TikTok that some. Guy has posted about how to tell everybody, here's the laws in the U.S., here's how you can do it, go break into somebody's house or occupy a vacant house.
We have 7 homes already.
Yeah.
And I watched a video where a guy came in, his mother had passed away, it was her house, so they had emptied the furniture and then they were deciding what they're going to do with the house. And these illegals broke into the thing and occupied it.
Yep.
And so I think he took off all the doors.
Yeah.
And took the windows out, or took and said, "You're going to get out of this house."
Yeah. So there was a house down in Lawton that I went to go tour. It was for sale by owner home. Was going to see if I could see if there was an opportunity list. It was kind of one of those things. It could be residential or it could be commercial.
Yeah.
Anyway, I show up to the house, and the guy that owns it's there, and he and his wife both came up and introduced, did the usual handshake, was in there walking around. I'm kind of looking at the doors, going, What's with the doors? What's with the chains? And they said, we had somebody break in here and basically they barricaded themselves in it so we couldn't get them out. I said, so like squatters? They're like, well, yeah, but we prefer trespassers. So in the state of Oklahoma, you have to occupy a property for 15 years and you have to pay the property taxes for 5 before you can claim squatters' rights. Now, that said, I know that there are people who've had somebody show up on their property. Like there was some vacant property not far from my house that basically the county sheriff had to be called because they had people that were camping on this property. The homeowner, the landowner went out and told them, get out. You got 2 choices. It couldn't get them to leave, so they ended up having to call the sheriff. And sometimes court has to get involved. Like I said, that's where it gets really muddy about when you call the sheriff, when you got to go to court, when you have to do this, when you have to do that. So Oklahoma, it's 15 years occupancy of a property and 5 years of you continuously paying the property tax, whether your name's on the deed or not. Then you can claim a just lost the
well. That's
adverse
why
possession. You can claim adverse possession. So squatting gets a little more muddier.
Yeah.
What's the difference between you're trespassing, get out of my house versus, I'm squatting. So, the basic guidance is this. If you've got a vacant property, you need to check on it often. If you've got neighbors that can help make sure that nobody's messing with it, let them know. Also let law enforcement know, hey, this house is vacant. No one should be there. So,
and you also be thankful that you live in the state of Oklahoma, because if you live in New York or you live in California or one of these nutty states where they just have a free-for-all and they let somebody who breaks into your house, well, they get the house. Well, I broke back into the house and kicked him out.
Exactly.
I mean, what's the difference?
That's the good news is Oklahoma's a Second Amendment state, and I had a deal that I was closed on the east side of Oklahoma last week. The house has been vacant for a while. My buyers are from out of state. And, of course, I'm there by myself to do the final walkthrough in this house. Well, I pack, and I was on my hip when I went to go check this house because mainly because of this topic we were going to talk about today.
Yeah.
I'm not walking in there to, unknown thing. I mean,
sure.
Luckily nobody was there, but at the same time, you never know. I mean,
right.
And that's where real estate can be dangerous because we're walking into empty houses. We don't know what's on the other side of that door.
Yeah.
But it is frustrating, and I think it should be addressed a little more pointedly as to what's the difference between a trespasser who's gone into my vacant house and has now said, this is my residence. No, it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody who's bought a house lately knows the frustration of trying to turn the power on or water on or trash on at a house. You have to have the deed in your hand in some communities in order to turn this on, and that's the reason why.
Right.
Is because there have been cases where you could call the power company and say, hey, give me the average bills in this house. I'm about to buy it. I want to see, my wife and I did it on the first 2 or 3 houses. You can't do that now. They won't tell you. If you want to turn on power on, they're like, cool. Email us a copy of your deed, and we'll turn that on for you right away.
Right.
So if you're trying to get stuff turned on in advance, you can still be done. The homeowner who currently has the account established can say, so-and-so is buying my house, and then you can transfer it that way. But they're trying to lock some of that down, but they're kind of doing it from the wrong end. It's utilities, but,
So I know last time government spending pissed you off. Is there anything new, I guess, in a couple of weeks, or is it still the same?
Yeah, I mean, it's just we need to get the government under control with the spending.
Yeah.
And probably right now the hot topic is the incorrect information that's being spread about the real estate business at this point.
Right.
All I can tell you to do is go talk to your favorite realtor or broker, and we'll tell you what the real story is. But once again, turn off the fake news because it's fake. It's a lie.
Well, I wanted to thank Mark for coming out today again and being a guest on Let's Talk Trash. And again, we had some topics that we didn't get to
as usual
because we seem to talk for a long time.
So that means I'll be your third repeat guest, right?
That's right. That's right. A couple of things again is if you will go to Let's Talk Trash on X, it's @_Let's Talk Trash. Instagram is @_Let's Talk Trash podcast. And I want to remind everybody that this is obviously Holy Week. And important days coming up on the 31st, which is Easter. And want to go through a couple chapters and verses in Matthew. Matthew 5, verse 3. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for they will inherit the kingdom in heaven. Number 4 is blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. And verse 5, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Just a few passages out of Matthew. And again, I want to remind everybody that this is Holy Week. And thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you again next week.